is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. 'Tis the season, and he's the reason. That's why we celebrate. He's the reason. So what are we going to talk about today? Again, thank you for making me a part of your day. I hope everybody's having a blessed holiday, and I hope everybody's staying safe out there. I know here in Ohio, the weather's kind of garbage and always has been and always will be in the time of December with all this snow and slush and just ice everywhere. I wiped out on my way on the way in from work the other day. I think it was yesterday. No, 2 days ago. I was walking back into work and I slipped and caught myself in a push-up stance, but I popped everything in my lower back. So, yeah, that was a fun day. But what are we going to talk about today? Well, we are going to talk about the college football playoff and a couple NFL stories today. I mean, I apologize. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode today, but there is so much to talk about after the first round of the college football playoff games. Let me tell you, there's a lot of controversy swirling around right now, and not because of the results, not necessarily because of certain things that happen in the game, more so the games itself. And as you all know, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32. Get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So let's not hesitate anymore, and let's get right into it with Notre Dame and Indiana. The 10th-ranked Hoosiers, the 10th-seeded Hoosiers, travel to South Bend to play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And don't let the final score throw you off. This was an immaculate beatdown. I know Notre Dame only won 27-17. This wasn't close. Indiana looked outmatched. Indiana looked like a team that did not deserve to be on the field with Notre Dame. There are so many, and here's where all the SEC fanboys come into play. The amount of people on Twitter, on the internet in general, I mean, I guess you can count me in that as well. The amount of people hammering Indiana just because Alabama didn't get in, Ole Miss didn't get in, South Carolina didn't get in. And guess what? I can agree with them at this point. This was an awful game to watch. Indiana scored 3 points in the entire first half. Like, Notre Dame didn't do anything special this game. You had Riley Leonard going 23 of 32, 200 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Jeremiah Love, 8 carries, 108 yards, and a touchdown. They really didn't do much because Jeremiah Love, he really didn't even do much if you take out that 98-yard touchdown run at the beginning of the game. Indiana just looked outmatched and outclassed on that football field. And here's what really bugs me. This is head coach Curt Cignetti from Indiana, and this is him on game day. You know, the same day that they are playing Notre Dame. You know, this is why some coaches are legends. Do you really think Nick Saban, now I know he's on game day now, but as a coach, I don't remember a time or can recall ever when Nick Saban ever took time out of prepping his team for a game day to go on college game day and talk smack a little bit. So here's what Curt Cignetti said when he was on college game day early on in the day before they played before they played Notre Dame.
And I've never beat a top 25 team. Well, you know, Coastal Carolina, back when we were little James Madison, moving up to the Sun Belt, they were 22nd end of the year. We beat them 47-7.
Okay.
So we don't just beat top 25 teams, we beat the shit out of them.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Curt Cignetti, that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Realistically, that was the stupidest thing I think I've heard a coach say, ever. Indiana looked completely outclassed against Notre Dame. Now, the question still remains, did Indiana deserve it to get in? Not necessarily, at least in my opinion. I don't think the Hoosiers deserve to get in because the format dictates so many different things. I still to this day, I don't like that 5 conference champions are going to get automatic bids and 4 of those are going to be first round buys. I don't like that system at all. I don't mind conference champions getting bids. What I do mind is them getting first-round buys. If you want to make a conference champion, get an automatic bid into the playoff, I have no problem against that. But if you start to make them first-round buys, you get garbage like this. So Indiana gets blown out by Notre Dame. I don't care what the final score was. 27-17, Notre Dame beats the brakes off of Indiana. This was not close, despite what anybody wants to say. Riley Leonard and Notre Dame and that offense and that defense, they did whatever they wanted with Indiana. I think they took it easy on Indiana. They could have put them in the dirt if they wanted to. But, 2 garbage time touchdowns in the fourth quarter made that game look a lot closer than it was. So I'm going to take a look at this. Would Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Miami, would any of these teams give Notre Dame a better fight? Yes. I could think of 3 teams that probably could beat Notre Dame. Miami, Alabama, and Ole Miss. South Carolina, I'm not entirely sure, even though they're the hottest team in college football up to the end of the season. When you look at this entire playoff system, yet again, it's still very, very weird because if the goal is to get the 12 best teams in the playoff, they fell short, terribly. They fell terribly, terribly short because there's at least 3 teams right now that didn't deserve to get in. And the next team, 4 teams. There's 4 teams that realistically didn't deserve to get in. First one was Indiana. The second one is what we're going to talk about now. Penn State absolutely bludgeons SMU 38-10. This was a 28-0 halftime game, and then Penn State just put it in cruise control. And Penn State didn't do anything remotely close to otherworldly. Drew Aller went 13 of 22, 127 yards. No touchdowns, no picks. Singleton had 14 carries, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Where did all these points come from? Penn State's offense they didn't need to do anything. The first 2 touchdowns of the game were Penn State pick sixes. Kevin Jennings looked completely lost, completely outmatched. And I said this before, I thought it was going to be a close game. That was a bad take on me. But I still called it that Penn State would have won this game because it's mid-December, freezing cold temperatures, Happy Valley, a whiteout game, no less, at Penn State. You think a team from Dallas, Texas is going to go into Penn State in those conditions and beat Penn State like that? No. I never thought that Penn State was going to lose to the SMU Mustangs. I thought SMU could keep it close like they did against Clemson in the ACC title game, but even that took a miraculous comeback to even make it respectable to the point where they lost on a last-second field goal. But if you look at the entirety of this game, Penn State barely needed to do anything. Kevin Jennings and the SMU offense just looked completely overwhelmed by the Penn State defense. There is a gap. There is a massive gap in college football, and it's starting to be realized a little bit. Again, who would have given Penn State more fits? Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina. See where this argument's now going to unfold. But realistically, I think in the circumstances of the college football playoff, they got the seedings right. They got the teams in right. They got it right. But now I think that you're going to see a lot of changes come at the end of this. At the end of this season, this can't stay. This college football playoff cannot stay the same like this. With this format, this seeding is garbage. Still, Oregon has to play Ohio State now, and we're going to talk about them next. Ohio State, I was on this for weeks, that Ohio State drew the worst possible matchup, which was Tennessee, because Ohio State has been struggling to stop the run. Michigan ran all over them, and they were struggling to run the ball. I don't know why they couldn't run the ball, But in this game against Tennessee, I thought Ohio State was completely outmatched on the defensive side and on the offensive line side. Dylan Sampson did nothing for Tennessee. Nico Iamaleava, 14 of 31, 104 yards. Ohio State absolutely blew the doors off of Tennessee, 42-17. This was pathetic. This was probably the most shocking game of the weekend. It really was. At least Clemson and Texas was an actual good game. 42-17, like that's terrible. You can make an argument now that, SEC bias. You've been hearing about SEC bias for a couple years now when it comes to the playoff and the national title spotlight. Well, Tennessee ended up beating Alabama earlier in this season, but all the Alabama fans that are pounding the table saying that they should be in, give the SEC more spots. Well, your 9th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers, who beat Alabama, they got the brakes beat off them by Ohio State. Will Howard finally, learned how to throw a football. Chip Kelly, tip of the cap to Chip Kelly because he actually opened up the pass game. He actually threw to Jeremiah Smith. He actually threw to Emeka Egbuka. He actually threw to Carnell Tate. This was overall just great game planning by the Ohio State Buckeyes. This was a great, great bounce back from the Michigan loss. And again, I'm not the biggest Ryan Day fan, but this is impressive nonetheless. To be at home as 20-point favorites and lose to your most hated rival in college football, and then to bounce back in a big way against Tennessee, which statistically had a top 5 defense in the entire country, that's thoroughly impressive. And Tennessee, talk about a team that is a little bit overrated. That was a garbage performance in Columbus. And the last college football playoff game of round 1 we're going to talk about, Texas, Clemson, the only good game of the first round. Obviously, Texas won by 14. This was a closer game than people want to give credit for, at least through the first 3 quarters, because, necessarily Clemson went up early. They went up 7-0, but then Texas never looked back. I knew that the magic would run out for Clemson. They lost 3 games this season. They miraculously won the ACC because Miami choked at the end of the year. They win against SMU. They bounce back and clinch a playoff spot. But realistically, there was no match here. Texas just overwhelmed Clemson. Now, Cade Klubnik didn't play terrible. 26 of 43, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not terrible. But again, here lies the issue with Texas. Quinn Ewers, 17 of 24, 202 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Okay. Here's the hot take for me. It might not even really be a hot take. If Texas wants to win the national title, if Texas wants to beat Arizona State, then beat Oregon or Ohio State, and then face Georgia again, more than likely, or Notre Dame, they have got to put Arch Manning in. They have to. They're running the football extremely well, but Quinn Ewers is not the guy to lead this. I thought Quinn Ewers was a top 10 quarterback at the beginning of the year. I really did. Now, he's so hit and miss. He's so inconsistent. It's like 3 picks here, 1 pick there, 4 touchdowns there, 2 touchdowns there. It's just so inconsistent with Quinn Ewers. If Texas wants to win the national title and compete for the national title, guess what? You got to swallow the pride and put in Arch Manning. I've been saying for months now that Quinn Ewers is the 2nd best quarterback on the Texas roster. Now, we all know that Quinn Ewers is more than likely hitting the transfer portal after the college football playoff is over because Arch Manning is in the pipeline, because Arch Manning is going to be starting no matter what next year. Barring injury, Quinn Ewers his time in Texas is done after the college football playoff. So that's the slate for the first round. Average margin of victory was, I believe, 19 points. Double digit, double digit, double digit, double digit. This is the worst first week of college football. Realistically, it was nice to see a Texas and Clemson, a Tennessee and Ohio State, an SMU, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame. Like, it was good to see those, except the product on the field is so bad. There's such a big gap in talent level from certain teams to certain teams. Like, the top end of the college football playoff seedings is light years ahead of the bottom 6 of the college football playoff. It's clear. Ohio State winning by 30. Penn State winning by 30. Notre Dame beating the brakes off of Indiana. Texas closing the deal against Clemson. These were theoretically good matchups on paper, but it clearly shows a talent disparity between the top end of the college football playoff bracket and the bottom 6 of the playoff bracket. Now you can make the case that Clemson shouldn't have been in, despite being a conference champion. Clemson shouldn't have been in. Tennessee shouldn't have been in. SMU shouldn't have been in. And Indiana shouldn't have been in. Realistically, if it was only 4 conference champions who got auto bids, I can think of 4 teams that I would replace those other 4 teams with right now. Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Miami. Those 4 teams would have put up a bigger fight against all these other teams, more so than SMU, Indiana, Tennessee, and Clemson right now. Anybody can make that argument. I'm going to stick with the process with this and say that it's still good for college football. But I don't like starting in the college football playoff, with a bunch of blowouts. If the goal was putting the 12 best teams in college football in a playoff to determine the national champion, they fell short. They got a third of the teams wrong. The committee got a third of the teams wrong. I can make a strong argument that Miami could beat Clemson. So, hypothetically, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's say Alabama was the 11 seed and they would play Penn State. I could see Alabama beating Penn State, or at least giving them more of a game. Let's switch out Clemson for Miami, or Clemson. Let's switch out Clemson for the team they lost to at the end of the year, South Carolina. I think South Carolina can beat Texas. Let's change Tennessee for Miami. Now, Miami could go on the road to Columbus and give Ohio State a game because they have the number 1 offense in the entire country. It doesn't matter. Tennessee couldn't do nothing. Nico Iamaleava is not Cam Ward. Not even close. Not even the same stratosphere. Absolutely not. So hypothetically, if, let's say Miami was put in the bracket at the 9 seed and they went on the road to Columbus, would they have won? Probably not, because Ohio State's a notorious tough place to play. But you left Cam Ward and the number 1 offense in college football out of the playoff. Tennessee, what did they have on offense? A good run game, which didn't show up against Ohio State. If there's one thing Miami would have done against Ohio State, it's put up points. Now, their defense still couldn't stop a nosebleed, but realistically, they would have given Ohio State a way better fight than Tennessee. And then let's switch out Indiana for Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss would give Notre Dame a game. Maybe not win it in South Bend, but Ole Miss would definitely stand more of a chance than Indiana did. So, realistically, let's put Clemson, Tennessee, SMU, and Indiana. Let's just put that aside, and let's say that Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama made it over these teams. I think the playoff is increased dramatically. I think the first round games are probably some of the best college football games in history if those teams were representing, the first round of the college football playoff. That's my little rant about the college football playoff because I just wanted to see a good product on the field. This was not fun to watch. The only one that was worth watching was Texas and Clemson, and that really wasn't worth it in the end because it really wasn't close towards the back end of that game. So That's the first round of the college football playoff. That is in the books. Texas over Clemson, Ohio State over Tennessee, Penn State over SMU, Notre Dame over Indiana. Now let's take a little look at the next round. The quarterfinals happening on December 31st and January 1st. We got the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, number 5 Texas against number 4 Arizona State. Now Arizona State got that first round bye because they were Big 12 champions. Realistically, Texas might roll Arizona State. Texas might roll Arizona State. Now let's take a look at the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. The 6th-seeded Penn State Nittany Lions and the 3rd-seeded Boise State Broncos. So we're going to really see how well Boise State is. I think... Now this is tough because I always thought SMU was a better team than Boise State, but I don't think anybody on SMU, no one player even comes close to the talent that Ashton Jeanty has at the running back spot for Boise. But realistically, I don't think Boise State has a shred of hope against Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. I think Penn State's going to roll Boise State. I think Ashton Jeanty will get his, but I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe Ashton Jeanty runs for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns to beat Penn State. Who knows? But I can easily see Penn State rolling Boise State. You got Notre Dame and Georgia in the All-State Sugar Bowl. You know, this is going to be the second best game. Right now, Georgia's favored by 1.5. Here's the thing. Georgia's going to be without Carson Beck this entire playoff, so that gives the keys to the offense to Gunnar Stockton, who's not bad and who just beat Texas in the SEC title game. Do I trust Gunnar Stockton to beat Notre Dame, whose defense is actually pretty stout? No. I think Notre Dame beats Georgia. I really do. 1.5 point spread right now. I'll take Notre Dame over Georgia. And then you got the Rose Bowl, the long-awaited rematch between the number 1 seed Oregon Ducks and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State right now is favored by 1.5, which is actually crazy to me. But I think this is easily the best game that's going to happen. Possibly throughout the entire college football playoff, this might be the best game out there. Everybody's been waiting for the long-awaited rematch between Oregon and Ohio State. Everybody thought this would happen in the Big Ten title game until Ohio State fell apart against Michigan, but I'm really looking forward to this rematch. Oregon was without their best wide receiver and their best edge rusher against the Buckeyes first time around, and now they have him back. But if Ohio State plays like they did against Tennessee, I think we're in for a fireworks show. I can see, realistically, this being a 45-40 kind of game. So that's a little outlook on, the college football playoff in the quarterfinal round. Who do I think is going to win? Texas over Arizona State. Penn State over Boise. Notre Dame over Georgia. And I'll tell you what, after what I saw when it comes to Ohio State, I hate admitting it, but I think Ohio State is going to win against Oregon. I think Ohio State's going to beat Oregon. I'm gonna say it's a close game, not as close as it was back in, I believe it was October. I'm gonna take Ohio State to win 38-34. I think it's gonna be a really, really good game. I really do. And man, college football is so awesome. It really is. But these games were god awful to watch. At least some of them. Hopefully the next round we'll actually have some quality games to watch and analyze a little bit. But if you look at it, I'm showing you guys the college football playoff rankings. The last one, where you had Miami at 13, Alabama at 11. What could have been? Tennessee, Indiana, and Tennessee, Indiana, SMU, and all these teams just should be gone. Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama should have all been in. They really should have. But that's going to do it for college football. Let's transition to something about the NFL. We're going to talk about the Chicago Bears. Now, This is probably the most dumpster fire organization in all of NFL, all of the NFL. That includes the Browns. That includes Jacksonville. That includes it all. Here's the issue. Other than the obvious, a lot of things. Matt Eberflus couldn't do it. Your offensive coordinator was garbage. You're ruining Caleb Williams. Can anybody really sit back and tell everybody? Can everybody sit back and say that it was entirely Justin Fields' fault when he was in Chicago? Because now everybody was in favor of moving off of Justin Fields. Everybody was in favor. Not the Chicago fan base, but some of the coaches, some of the players, and obviously the owners. They were all for moving Justin Fields in favor of bringing in Caleb Williams. Now, I have always been a Caleb Williams fan. I think he's an unbelievable talent. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's the most talented quarterback the Bears have ever had in their existence. But now Caleb Williams is looking even worse than what the Bears did last year with Justin Fields. Now, Caleb Williams, does he need to get his confidence back? Yes. But here's another thing. I believe it was the past 6 weeks, and all of them are losses for Chicago. I believe in the past, I think it's 6 weeks that Caleb Williams has not thrown an interception. He's only thrown touchdowns. His offensive line is terrible. Whenever I turn on a Bears game, I'm watching this man run for his life. I'm watching this man trying his absolute best to keep plays alive because his offensive line is so putrid. But this issue with Chicago goes so much deeper. It goes so much deeper than just a head coach. This is a terrible culture. This is a terrible, terrible ownership group. This is not necessarily the greatest front office. They have talent on the roster. You have Caleb Williams. Statistically, the offensive line should be better, but again, that's probably coaching. So you have Caleb Williams. You have Cole Kmet at tight end. You have DeAndre Swift at running back. You have Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore at wide receiver. You can't tell me, and they have a stout defense still. They still have a good defense, somewhat. They've been giving up. They gave up 70 points these past 2 weeks. 3 weeks. But here's my whole issue with Chicago is the fact that they can't get the culture right. They can't get anything right, despite having so much talent on the roster. Talent will only take you so far unless you have structure in the NFL. That is what the Bears have been missing. Structure and culture, and someone who can come in and actually coach for once. And someone who's not in over their head. This is not a job for like a one-time offensive coordinator. Now, I know Joe Brady is a hot name out there for, possibly a head coaching gig. Chicago is not the place for a startup head coaching career. You need someone with tenure. You need someone who's just has a presence. You need someone who's a culture setter. You need someone who, is just rugged a little bit. And you need someone who, can take control of a locker room. I'm going to give you guys 2 head coach ideas in my mind right now, at least for Chicago, that I feel like would be a start for them to succeed. Because I don't think they'll truly succeed until the McCaskies sell this damn team. They've done nothing good over the past, give or take, 40 to 50 years. They have one Super Bowl to hang their hat on. They have one Super Bowl. They ran Mike Ditka out of town. They basically ran so many people out of town that were vital parts to that Super Bowl team. And then the years to come, there's just so much garbage that has happened with the McCaskies and the Chicago Bears franchise. But as far as 2 head coaches, you can't go for coordinator. You can't go for coordinator. You can't even really go for defensive coordinator. You need someone who's still offensive-minded, but you can go defensive. You can go head coach who leans on defense if they're the right coach. And I have 2 coaches right now that probably would be the best fit for Chicago. Not necessarily, style, but would instantly change the culture, would instantly set standards, would instantly probably get in the GM's face and the ownership group's face. That's Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick. Now, I know Bill Belichick accepted a job at University of North Carolina. I understand that. But there's a clause in his contract that allows Bill Belichick to leave before June. So, if I'm the Bears, my top option is Mike Vrabel. Someone who's tough, someone who has a presence, someone who's a culture setter. Mike Vrabel got Ryan Tannehill to the postseason as the number 1 seed in Tennessee. Now look at Tennessee ever since Mike Vrabel was let go. Dumpster fire. One of the worst organizations in football right now. One of the worst franchises in football right now. Absolutely putrid. So if you brought in Mike Vrabel, he would instantly set standards. He would instantly get in the faces of the players, the ownership groups, the GM. He would demand a lot of things from these players in this organization. Most importantly, he will add what the Bears have been missing for years, and that's structure. Structure and standards. No more 4-win seasons. No more 5-win seasons. There's too much talent on this roster to go 5-10, to go 5-12, to go 6-10, whatever it is. There's too much talent on this damn roster. You have the most talented quarterback in the history of your franchise, and yet you are letting him waste. And this is his rookie year. He should be getting better as the year progresses, not worse. You look around the league, Caleb Williams is probably so jealous of other teams like Jaden Daniels and other rookies like Bo Nix. I feel like Caleb Williams is a little bit jealous because Jaden Daniels is a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and so is Bo Nix. And those two teams might make the postseason. Meanwhile, the Bears are fourth in their own division. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, obviously, I'm recording this on Sunday, so they play the Lions at 1 o'clock today. We'll see how that goes. I don't think the Bears are going to win. So, hypothetically, let's just say that the Bears lost today. They've lost 9 straight. They started the season 4-2. They lost 9 straight. That's coaching. A lot of it, that's coaching. There's no confidence in that damn locker room. And like I said, Mike Vrabel would instantly come in, set a culture, set standards, get into the organization's face, and demand the absolute best out of all of them. Is it going to work out like that? I don't know. I don't put anything past Chicago because they're probably the biggest dumpster fire in the entirety of the NFL. If you look at the entire NFC North standings, you got the first place Detroit Lions, 12-2. Followed by Minnesota, 12-2, Green Bay, 10-4, and then you got Chicago, 4-10. Every other team in your division has 10 or more wins. You can't even get to 500. You can't even get to 5 wins. That's how pathetic Chicago is. That was a big rant, but I've always had a soft spot for Chicago just because I've always loved Devin Hester, and he was one of my favorite players to watch growing up watching the NFL. Devin Hester, they called him anytime for a reason. Anytime he had the ball, he was scoring a touchdown pretty much. That's something the Bears are missing too. They need more playmakers, I would say. You can never have too many playmakers. But I've always had a soft spot for Chicago because of this. Just to see what they are now, a total dumpster fire. And I think the biggest solution, at least the start, is either Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick. And that's going to wrap it up this week on the Lake Show, everyone. Again, Merry Christmas to all, and please be safe out there. Drive safe. Enjoy your time with your family, your friends, your loved ones, your spouses. 'Tis the season, and he's the reason. Always remember that. I try to remind myself that every single day, and that's who I try to live my life for. The one and true King, Jesus Christ. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless, and Merry Christmas.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up!